Welcome to the Jungle Brothers podcast. I'm your host, Joey, and today I'm joined by DJ Murakami, also known as Strongcamps. DJ is a California-based coach working with people both face-to-face and online, and he's a big proponent of strength training. However, his definition or view of strength is a lot broader than what you would find in most gyms, and that is largely what we discuss today. We do also discuss microdosing of psychedelics and the role that they can play in life, but also in the training environment. And we talk about some of the facets of the fitness industry and the movement game and just sort of investigate maybe what could be done better or what improvements he might like to see. Now, it's a beautiful chat, really fascinating guy. It was great to have him on. I want to ask a favor from you as a listener of this show. I would like you to help support us. Now, you've got a couple of ways you can do that. You can leave us a review, give us all the 5 stars if you think we're worth it. And whatever platform you're on, Spotify, iTunes, there's a review button there. That helps to let the platform know that the show's decent, and then it will tell other people about it. Or if you don't want to do that, you could just share the episode with someone you know who might enjoy listening to it. So take a screenshot of it, put it on your social media, tag us, send it to a friend, say, hey, check this out. Any of those measures will go a really long way to helping us continue to get awesome guests like DJ onto the show. All right, onto the episode. Mate, can you tell me, give me a little background just on where you are? From what I understand, you're in California.
Yeah, I'm in Southern California. So right between LA and San Diego, in a small town called Murrieta. Beautiful place.
And tell me about, I know Cali. From what I could tell, I'm from Sydney, Australia. So being in California kind of parts of it actually felt a lot like home.
Just as expensive, yeah.
Yeah, just as expensive. Maybe there's a bit of an attitude amongst the people where you're in kind of God's country.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, like the same as we have here in Sydney, where it's sort of like we consider it to be the nicest part of the country. That's up for debate, but it's the place. It's got the best cities, it's got the best, beaches and whatnot.
Yeah, the food's amazing over there in Sydney too.
Yeah, well, the Mexican over your part of the world is on another level.
Best.
The absolute finest, better than Mexico.
Yeah, it's amazing how we did that.
But the thing that struck me when I was there was that we actually have you been to Australia before?
Yeah, I've been to Sydney, just Sydney,
okay.
And did a workshop out there, and I just remember eating some of the best like Korean food over there. That was really good.
Ah, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, from what I understand, there's good Korean, but it sounds like you probably didn't have the typical maybe tourist experience. Like you got to see some real stuff.
Yeah, some locals helped me out, which is always great.
But you know what struck me? I was driving north of San Diego. I was living in San Diego for a few months, and all of a sudden I saw gum trees, which like eucalyptus trees, and I hadn't seen them anywhere else in the world. And I thought that they were purely an Australian invention. And it kind of struck me that there's a lot of similarities in the flora and fauna, and that our parts of the world were at one point connected.
Yeah, I don't know. I grew up with eucalyptus, and all I remember is that now I have like a eucalyptus branch in my shower. Is like the hipster thing to do now. It's dried and you heat it up and you get that like smell. I guess it's just one step more valid than essential oils. So a lot of street cred. But yeah, I love eucalyptus. Good for insects don't like it, right?
Yes.
Is that true?
The oil. Yeah, the oil has many uses like that. Good for bushfires, actually.
It probably smells interesting.
No, are you familiar with what? I think there's like 1,000 different types of eucalypt trees, but are you familiar with? They have a mechanism for they play an important role in bushfires, which is incredibly fascinating.
What's
Don't
that?
let me hijack the conversation because we're not here to talk about the tree thing. But let me pass this on to you because I
I
think
only
this is
thought
so.
there was one eucalyptus tree, and now you're telling me there's thousands. So
No, there's
I'm getting
thousands
more out of this conversation already right now.
so far. So what they do is, and I read this in a book. It's an interesting book called Leviathan, which is by an Australian author, and it's essentially like he calls it the unofficial biography of Sydney, and he talks about many things in it. But one of the chapters he talks about the burning of the landscape and how this land essentially has been built over thousands and thousands of years of wildfires, but also controlled fires. And what that's done is it's created a bush that relies on fire in order to maintain itself. One of the big problems we have now is that since since the English colonized the place, we don't maintain the bush, and so we have these really bad wildfires, which you would have seen in recent years. In any case, what eucalypt trees do is when there's a fire nearby, so that the climate heats up, the tree will spit eucalyptus oil out of out of the whole tree. It will start to just sort of mist eucalyptus oil. That eucalyptus oil becomes an accelerant, and the fire will travel up from the ground up to the top of the tree, to the foliage. And the leaves are all full of eucalyptus oil, so they will also combust, and it will essentially explode fire to the neighboring trees. So it creates like a tunnel for the fire to travel up it and away from it, which in turn protects the tree.
Wow, I didn't know that. So it's a feature, not a bug, right?
Yeah.
It evolved for that. That's fascinating.
But then the fucked up thing is that you get these, you get people, we build our houses in the bush and we want to have eucalyptus trees because it's Australian and that kind of thing. And then we have wildfires that come through and it turns into like, it's working against you essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing we have in common. Southern California, fires and earthquakes, but that's our thing. So samesies.
Tell me about that. And I want to, I guess I'm asking you about your home because I think it's nice for people who are listening to get an impression of sort of what it's like in your piece of the world right now. What's the situation in, well, let me restart that. I hear people talking about sort of a doom and gloom aspect of California. You've had the wildfires, some really devastating ones recently. I understand that's part of that happens there at regular intervals. I also hear certain people talk about undesirable political situations and whatnot. And I mean, there's always people talking about that. Are these things that we hear, that I'm hearing, is your impression of where you lived changed, or is it still a wonderful place to be and somewhere that you love?
So I guess a bit of a disclaimer where I live. I mean, I just go in my home and the gym and the grocery store, and I don't engage with the world around me. But I'm in a little pocket that's very, it's a military town. So we have one of the biggest Marine bases right next to us. So politically, we're the opposite in the bubble of like LA, San Francisco, Oakland. These big cities are very liberal and they have a very different political climate than where I'm at. So I haven't really experienced any of that. Even the pandemic was great here. Nothing really changed during the pandemic, and we're in one of the harshest states that did restrictions. So yeah, if you're in a large city, LA, these other cities, yeah, shit got wild, and I know a lot of people left the state because of that. But I'm insulated, so I'm not in touch with any of that. So yeah, it's the same old for me. Even the fires, a lot of fires around here, but I'm in a deserty climate, so and I'm kind of in a valley, so yeah, I see them, but it hasn't affected me.
Is the when you mentioned the gym, the grocery store, and home, is it by design that you don't really go outside of that?
Yeah, I mean, I Yeah, even in my home, it's like kitchen and the the floor to sleep and shower. But I just kind of like to design my life. I'm lucky because I love the gym. I love working out. Doubles as an office, doubles as where I, train people and do my online stuff out of. And then, yeah, food. I collect food often and I bring it to the kitchen. So that's about it. Very little social life. Um, but isn't that a lot of trainers? Aren't we all a little off,
I suppose. I guess there's a full spectrum there. Speaks to
But
me.
aren't most
Sound.
trainers on the spectrum, Joe? You agree?
Yeah, to an extent, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I can say I like. Well, no, my life for the last 10 years really hasn't been too dissimilar from that. Besides, maybe some training at another gym outside of this gym, but it does revolve around more or less the same things.
That's exciting. A new gym, yeah, a little
Yeah, that's cool,
variety.
huh? Which actually, I'll ask you about it later. But I caught up with your conversation that you had on the Questcast about if you were to continue jujitsu or not. Um, don't let me go there now because I got one tangent I want to stay on, but I want to talk to you about that. Um, the that idea though, like the simplification of things, like for a lot of people listening, I don't know, it's kind of nice to look at that and think, oh wow, this guy has, like, he keeps it real simple. Training, nutrition, it gets the food from that place, makes it there. Um, did you ever have a time in your life where you felt like you had too much going on, or where you needed to simplify it in this way, or has that always been the way that you've operated?
Yeah, I had times in my life that were like I've had rock bottoms. They weren't going so well. I was kind of going down the wrong path. But the one variable that was always constant and kind of anchored my routine was the gym. Like training has always been there, thankfully for me, especially when I was going through rough patches, everything falling apart. Was something I stayed accountable to, something you know, it, it gave me some sort of self worth. I do think like a lot of people, younger kid, insecurity, um, a lot of reasons I got into training, but man, who knows? I think it's a thing that potentially is a lifesaver for a lot of people. And it could be other things, but for me, it's training. And yeah, so now I'm thankful that, okay, so I have this year and I get to kind of build around that and orient my life effort around these goals that all build upon each other. So yeah, I'm thankful I get to have that as a part of my life.
The gym that you train out of, it's called Reps?
I'm at a new gym called Boombox
Oh,
down the street. Yeah.
yeah.
Reps didn't
Okay.
make it through the pandemic
Oh
like a
shit,
lot
man.
of
That's
gyms. Yeah.
Wow, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
that was going to be my next question was, do you, like, are you involved in that in the business? But I guess not. You work out of that and that's it, or out of your current
Oh
space.
yeah. Yeah, hell no. That I've always been reluctant to because if you think about it, so down here the big model is private gym and independent trainers rent out the space, kind of like a barber shop. You rent out a chair and work out of there. Man, that just seems like such a great deal, no overhead, little liability. You just pay your rent and you get a gym. So I never really got the idea of why would you want to own a gym that did that. It seems like a high risk business for me, but I know it works out. You have a gym, right? You have a successful gym.
Success, yeah. I mean, that's up for discussion, but yeah, I got a gym.
Yeah, it scares me. It's a lot of work, but I think that's how cool is it to create your own vision and environment and a special place for people? That's also cool to see. And I like that, being part of that in gyms.
Yeah, yeah, and I think everyone has a role to play there. I mean, we've got a bunch of amazing coaches here that probably don't all aspire to own their own place. Some of them just want to hang out. You know, some will be here for a short time, some a long time, but it's great. You know, it's nice. I think what I'm interested to kind of understand there is like there is a transition or there's kind of two different characters you play when you're a coach. You're the person who's into training and you obviously like it. You know, you like to explore things, you like to work on whatever you like to work on. But then there's the business person side of it where you got to make money and you got to be marketing and things have got to be um, supporting your lifestyle and whatever your goals are there. How do you? Is what I'm picking up from you is that you're like, look, I don't want to own a gym because I want to just focus on what I'm doing and I like that. Do you find it hard to go between those two roles, and do you find that you maybe tend to maybe overdo it more on the training side, or vice versa?
Hmm. I try to, I try to optimize both. Um, I have a lot of my days are like my training is whatever gap opens up that I can get it in. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm in a different space because most of my um, personal training clients are online as opposed to in person. Um, but yeah, I don't know where the balance point is, to be honest. I try to optimize both. Sometimes the training takes a back seat because of life, and sometimes business does. So I'm not going to be telling anyone the secret behind that.
How do you stay jacked then?
How do I stay jacked? Joe, I lost around 20 pounds in the past month and a half. So people are calling me skinny nowadays. But the
Tough
camera,
break.
if you get the lighting and the camera angle down, it's a game of shadows. You know what I mean? Like, we've all got that spot in the gym. So I think that's the main factor there is camera angle. Second factor would just be, consistent, progressive training overload over time with whatever volume you have, frequency you have available. And then, same with the diet, but mainly lighting.
How did you it makes me think of one of your Move Boys posts, which I'm definitely going to quiz you on that later. Um, how do how did you lose 20 pounds, and was it intentional?
Yeah. So I lost 20 pounds by eating less food calorically. And I planned it out. It was more of like, man, I've never, so I've had a few clients to lose over 100 pounds. But when it comes to working with people who want to do like physique shows, bodybuilding, I usually refer them out. And I'm always playing with like, I like to feel strong and maybe I'll be body recomping, but I'm never like trying to cut down and get shredded. And I'm like, you know what? I've never done it. I want to feel what it's like. I want to experiment. And so, I went on a little journey to, plan out a calorie deficit. And it's been so cool. It's been, I wish I would have done it earlier. So I'm getting a lot of information. It's like I'm finding out physiologically what happens. And I'm noticing, hey, I feel my non-exercise activity, go down. Like I'm breathing slower. I'm not shaking my legs anymore. I feel so I'm getting kind of deep into it right now as far as the calories, and I find myself like lying more. Like I'll tell a lie and I'm like, why did I lie about that? And it's merely just so I don't have to spend the energy going into like a topic. So I'm like, that's interesting. And I'm like looking back cognitively, even psychologically, I'm doing little things to just cut energy everywhere. Um, Another interesting thing on the journey is, man, I felt great. I feel really good cognitively on going down this many calories. And you know how like people on carnivore or keto will be like, man, my mind is so sharp, my energy levels are so smooth. I think that's just being in a calorie deficit and losing weight. I think it's the
Hmm.
same thing. I mean, I feel even better than my stints with keto and carnivore. So yeah, it was really interesting. Gaining strategies on, food choices. So it's all stuff that'll just increase my skill level as far as coaching and just getting to know my body more. Yeah, I'm glad I did this.
Do you notice a negative effect on your training?
Yeah, so that was kind of where I was gonna pull the brakes on it. Is when I'm tracking libido, which hasn't been affected too much. I'm tracking strength, which strength I'm still hitting PRs and increasing during this. And I'm not saying that as like I'm a badass. It probably means I was not putting in the effort or my potential effort before that I'm capable of. I think I was sandbagging it a little bit, is what I've learned, because I'm still progressing. I'm just pushing harder. I'm like, dude, I could have pushed this hard the whole time.
Hmm.
So now I'm looking forward to, increasing calories going on the upside and then, keeping that intensity going. But both those things, once again, probably because I'm a newbie at going in this body weight calorie range and it's my first time, they're all going good.
I did a podcast with a coach I know here in Sydney. Fella's name is Rawdon Dubois, great name, but he's like a physique kind of coach, and he works with a bunch of whatever. He has a few bodybuilders and then a bunch of physique competitors, etc. I spoke to him on the back end of COVID, the second lockdown that we had here in Sydney, which was last year, and he was like 3 months into a really hectic cut. And two things that struck me on that. One was I didn't get a word in the whole show because he was just so jacked up that he just like rambled on incessantly. Yeah, it was fascinating, but I was like, whoa, Rawdon's really been, I don't know, he might have been hypercaffeinated or something, but he like he showed me his condition on that day. And he's in his mid 40s, I think. And he's typically like a barbell kind of guy, loves big and strong. And he would just had veins all up through his abs and like and his face was completely withdrawn. He said to me he had stopped. He still kept up his steps every day, but he couldn't take his dog with him anymore because his dog he's got like a little Staffordshire Terrier. The Staffy had just become too strong and it was too taxing for him to hold on to. But when he was crossing the road, when he'd get to the point where you can like just step up the curb, he would actually go left or right instead so that he could find the little ramp to get, onto the footpath, the sidewalk. Which for people listening who maybe can't understand what it's like to be in a calorie deficit, but still be pushing forward with your training and stuff. It's incredible. There's two like that story for me. Like there's two very conflicting things going on. Hard training, but then also the suffering that goes on in the rest of life.
Oh yeah, it's an interesting practice, especially the willpower aspect, which I find for me it's easier to stick to some sort of nutrition plan, meal plan when being strict. Like I just baked a bunch of cookies yesterday, and no temptation to eat it. Where if I had my normal higher allotment of calories, I go loose a lot more just because I'm like, oh, I can. Yeah. But now it's such an easy black and white decision. Like, oh no, if I do, I can only have this much. If not, there it is. So like the temptation has gone down in a lot of things that, um, willpower, which, is, I don't know if we want to call it that. We have unlimited willpower, but my mental cognitive fatigue is less in terms of that. But yeah, I'm finding myself sitting more. Like now when I'm training people, I'm like sitting the whole time. I'm doing exercises. I'm like, I wonder if there's a sitting version I could do here. Oh yeah. I'm just trying to make everything easier. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see you do that like unconsciously, really.
You said we have unlimited willpower. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think just the research I've seen, we used to think that willpower was like this fuel tank, and you run through it throughout the day. But I don't think works like that. It's a more of a perception. Like fatigue is an emotion, and it's very task specific, which we evolved to do. So that's when boredom kicks in when you're running this opportunity cost or cost benefit analysis of what you're doing, and your mind says, hey, let's do something that gives us pleasure, which used to be tied to food and sex and things we needed. So yeah, I think as long as you manage that task specific fatigue, which is why, hey, if you give yourself meaning, purpose, or rewards behind things, you could reframe it. Like training, like I love training. To a lot of people, it could be pretty much torture, and their level of fatigue is going to be very different. Now you've seen it, like imagine running a race and you're like, man, over that hill is the finish line. And you just drive yourself to get there and you realize that's not the one. Fatigue will set in because your brain's like, hey, I'm expecting a reward. So yeah, I see that willpower as a reflection of just that opportunity cost your brain's always running, and not so much a physiological energetic system. Like there's studies where something pleasurable will increase energy, right? They used to think it was glucose going to the brain that's giving you energy, but there's studies where you're just rinsing your mouth out with artificial sweetener and it gives you a boost. So yeah, I think it's more the perception and psychology that we're dealing with.
Could I ask you to elaborate on, you mentioned earlier, when you were younger or at different stages in your life, not on a great path. Are you able to sort of elaborate on what was going on there? Because I'm seeing and how this took you into how training became a salvation of sorts.
Yeah, just young and dumb and angry and not dealing with emotions or events that were going on, and just trying to numb them and escape them through self-destructive means. Yeah, I was definitely heading towards full self-destruction willingly at a certain age. And like I said, training was that thing that I stayed accountable to and always came back to. And it was actually psychedelics, mushrooms, that kind of pulled me out of, or made me aware and shifted my perspective. And actually, I actually just objectively looked at, wow, this is what I'm doing with my life. This is how I'm acting. This is where it's headed. All these habits, these traits were kind of deconstructed in front of me. And, that was the starting point of, do I want to still be this person, or do I want to put these things down and go into growth? And even just knowing you have that option and not being, run by emotions. That was kind of my journey with, I looked at it as training on not just the physical level, but hey, the emotional level, the mental level. And yeah, at that age, that's how I had to interpret everything, was lessons through training. Luckily, it was a great teacher. So yeah, that was the past.
How were the psychedelics part is fascinating. How was that? administered? Was that just you dabbling with things and being recreational about it, or was there was there a guide, or was there some kind of intentional use of these things to achieve an end?
Back then, thankfully, it turned out this way. I knew nothing about psychedelics. Um, I thought it was like weed, where you like take it and you get high. Um, I didn't know it took 45 minutes plus to kick in and have the effects. So I was out drinking. Someone had them. I took an eighth. I was like, hey, I don't feel these. Got another eighth. 30 minutes later, got another eighth. And I ended up taking this guy's bag and eating it. And yeah, and bing, kicks in. I had my journey. But I'm glad it happened that way, because now that terrifies me. I have the fear of God in me, right? I'm not going to take that much if I can help it, or if I do, I'm terrified. So yeah, I'm glad I stumbled upon it and I got the lessons from it that I needed.
Was that we're talking mushrooms, like just
Yeah,
whole?
psilocybin.
Yeah, dried might cool. And I mean, tell me more about it, because there's when you look at the people, like obviously there's recreational use of these things, and it's like, yeah, we got fucked up and did mushies. I don't know if you guys call them mushies, but there's that whole part of it. And then there's the ceremonial side, the reverence, the respect for and so you're like, oh, we're out drinking, and then I smashed a bunch of mushrooms and went on this hero's journey. Um, how did it play out? Where were you, and how did it not just become a night where you were fucked up and maybe didn't wake up remembering anything?
Yeah, I I see. So I tend towards the side of just taking them, like our ancestors probably did, running across them in the environment. What's this? Bloom. And then you are having the experience. Mainly because all the like institutional paths toward how you're supposed to do it, whether different cultures or now it's being indoctrinated in like Western medicine and therapy. Yeah, I'm not really like, that's cool. I'm glad they're doing it. But I'm like, hey, it's your human right. Just, it's a plant and you're a human. You both kind of grew here, interact with each other. So yeah, I think just the amount that first time, the quantity I took, there was a high chance it was going to be a spiritual experience and it was going to change me. And it brought out a lot of things I already knew I needed to face and deal with, but I just, my whole life was just numbing and escaping these things. So it was a whole session of, look at it, face it, and just, you have the information now. Now you know that you have a choice. Don't avert your gaze. This is it. So it was a very challenging journey to do that, which I think is the benefit of like therapeutic psychedelics is, facing the shadows and integrating them. So yeah, I definitely had that experience reluctantly.
Talk to me about I know you've done some experimentation. I don't know, maybe it goes beyond that, but with microdosing. Tell me, kind of break that down for me. There'll be people listening who don't really understand the concept of that. I think most people have heard about it, but maybe don't quite get how it works on a sort of ground level.
Yeah, microdosing is taking a very small amount so that you don't really notice the effects too much, and taking it more frequently. People take it to, I think it's been shown, I'm not sure if the verdict's in, but it's comparable to like an antidepressant. A lot of people say it is like the limitless pill that increases productivity, creativity, output. It's big over here in like the tech industry and the creative industry. It's huge in MMA, we've found. You will not believe the amount of MMA fighters who use this, because it's not on the controlled substance like list It's not WADA doesn't check for it.
Oh, wow.
And it seems to be a perfect fit for like jujitsu, sparring, striking, these things. Just because you get in the flow and you get this read on other people, this connection with the other person. Which, if I had to speculate, anyone who's done like macro doses, large doses with other people or in groups, you like have these instances where you're almost telepathic, just reading other people having the same like without verbalizing it. I don't know what that is. Maybe you're just more sensitive to physical cues or picking up on something that we can't really measure yet. But I think there's something there, and I think they're utilizing it on in fighting. But yeah, to recommend it to the public, I'm hesitant about that because taking large amounts of psychedelics is very safe, but taking small amounts frequently, we don't really know what that does. And it interacts with some receptors in cardiac muscle. Do you remember ephedrine? Was it ephedrine? It used to be a supplement, like a weight loss supplement in the
Kind of
early
like
2000s.
speed, wasn't it?
Yeah, and people had some like heart issues, and I think it works on that same receptor. So there might be some contraindications for people with heart issues. But yeah, like I said, it's so new. Like, I don't think I think that's a new thing, maybe in the past 40 years, 30 years that people have been doing. But for thousands of years, people have been taking large doses. So we know that's pretty vetted physiologically. But yeah, microdosing, it's pretty, it's the new cool thing to do, apparently.
It sure is. I feel like I'm a little bit behind the eight ball with this one and need to catch up. The large doses, I'm guessing just to kind of, you can't do large doses every day. So well, I don't know, maybe you could, but is the idea
You
there
sure wouldn't want to.
is the idea that when you do it in a larger quantity, that it just has a natural way of, you don't do it again for quite a while, and that's how it sort of evens out?
I mean, I would venture the larger the dose, the more time you're going to naturally want to take before doing it again. And the smaller the dose, just because the perception of it isn't really visible, you could do that pretty frequently. But even so, we ran a little test with a group of people for microdosing psilocybin, like around 0.15 to 0.25 and grams, and everyone naturally kind of stopped around 6 weeks without us planning that in or giving instruction. So I thought that was interesting, and I found that myself. I really never want to go past 6 weeks. So I think there's something self-limiting about psychedelics in that manner. But we'll see when the pharmaceutical companies get a hold of it and how they prescribe it and how it's used. That will be interesting to see.
When you do it when you microdose like that, do you feel the effects in a conscious kind of way? Like, are you training and you're thinking to yourself, oh man, like I'm really doing this, whatever, differently, better because of what of the dosage I had this morning? Or is it a case of, I don't know, maybe with a lot of things where perhaps when you're not doing it, so when you've come off the microdosing schedule, that you're like, oh, I was actually a little bit different over that period? Like, it's kind of in retrospect that you see the effect.
Yeah, I notice it while doing it, at the current time of doing it. But I do see a lot of benefits the next day when I'm taking days off. I think just because they linger, that increased kind of awareness stays, and then it compounds. So doing it again, it's kind of already there, and then it increases again. And I think maybe that's one of the things where I'm like, oh, I don't really want to take any more of this. I'm good at my level. And once again, this could be don't count out placebo, because you could feel a lot of things just by believing it, right? But I feel tiny physiological differences, and I think I'm more sensitive. Like I become more sensitive over the years, so I need like less and less. But first thing I'll kind of realize is a breathing. I just take less restrictive, bigger breaths. Kind of have a like kind of relax a little bit, like my facial musculature. And yeah, I'm more social, which is different for me. And just my decisions, one thing looking back is I've always made decisions that were different than my normal routine. We talked about willpower, right? Like I get out of my groove and habitual patterns way more easy, and my curiosity takes control and less of a barrier to kind of following that or chasing it, which is usually beneficial and usually comes with growth. Sometimes a lot. Like sometimes I could trace decisions that have changed the trajectory of my life to something while on a microdose.
It's a strong case for microdosing there.
Potentially, yeah.
Tell me about I want to talk to you about training, and I want to get an insight into how it works for you. You are known as Strongcamps on Instagram. Explain that name to me.
So I had a Saturday boot camp class in like 2014, and I called it Strongcamps instead of boot camp. It was Strong Camp, and we did like circuit strength training. So I made I had an Instagram, but it was like pictures of food and flowers and like none of myself. So I made a business Instagram and I named it the name to promote this boot camp. Yeah. So that's how I chose the name.
Okay. That's cool. How funny how these things evolve. Because when I see it, I'm like, Strongcamps, like, what does it mean? Like it has, just, whatever connotations, and it's great. It's you, right?
Yeah.
Most people listening, your name's probably going to be in the title of this episode. So, people will know you and they'll be somewhat familiar with what you do. But if I'm sort of describing it to someone who's uninitiated, I would say that strength is obviously a huge, one of the pillars of what you do. But a lot of what I see you playing with, and I do see you playing and exploring with a lot of unique movements. I see you going outside of the boundaries of conventional sort of fitness, but even movement. Like you're coming up with something and you're trying your own shit and then you're loading it up. Would that be a fair kind of synopsis of, what we see from Strongcamps?
Sure. Yeah. Strength is important. I think that's kind of the goal for me when working with people is how do we make people stronger? And I think the more ways we could make people stronger, not just like to make different parts stronger, but the more ways to access exercises and movement, potentially just the more accessible they could be to people in the general population. That's one reason. Second reason is it's fun. And in my own personal programming, a lot of, I always leave a little bit of room for just exploring stuff. It might be something I saw on social media, might be something I wanted to try, might just be playing around. But I have that programmed in little windows. And that's the majority, I guess, of what I post is just those little like windows of me trying something for the first and last time. Might be a little deceiving, but yeah, it's important because, sometimes you'll just get a new perspective, new information from this, and then you could apply it as a tool later on if you need to.
And that was going to be my next question, but maybe you've already sort of answered it just there, where with the stuff that you're doing that is more playful and it's something unique and it's unconventional, probably a better word for it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a way of like, what is your structure for doing these things? You know, do you look at it and go, oh, I want to explore that thing, so I'm going to do it a couple times a week for the next 6 weeks? Or is it like, fuck it, I got 10 minutes right now, I'm just going to have a go at this and then I will move on from it and forget about it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough question. So more the latter, I would say. So a lot of them I use for testing. Like, let me see if I can do this or what I could do without training it. And, there's movements I'll try every 3 years, 4 years, or maybe once a year. I'm like, wow, I got better at it. It feels better. I'm stronger. Range of motion is better without training it. I'm not big for super high skill exercises, to be honest. Those are the things I like to just test. I like easy, basic stuff that I could produce a lot of effort on. And I'll, modify it if I have certain goals. So that's one side. A lot of these unconventional skills, a lot of it's just testing or trying to see how my training would carry over. But on the other hand, I'm pretty big on like novelty or variety in training, which, a lot of people say like stick to the basics. And I do stick to the basics, but I rotate. Like a squat is always going to be there, but there's a million ways to squat. And I could use a sandbag, different implements, different stances, Zercher, back squat. So I do like to rotate a lot of variation, but it's always with the basics. And if there's a kind of external task, high skill feat, I guess I classify it in my program as like perform a feat. And that's what I have in those little windows of playing around with stuff. But yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. What about applying that's obviously for what you want to follow and what you're training. How does that change when you're working with a new client, maybe someone who's much less experienced in training? Do you still kind of apply this same idea of, like what I picked up from the squat reference you made was that like the theme of the squat is always there, but the specific variation might vary from day to day, week to week, month to month. Would that still be something that you might do with a new client, or do you tend to boil it down to more sort of basics over a longer period of time for them?
Yeah, I'm usually coming back to the basics. But once again, basics to me are just kind of the movement pattern, and more specifically, the model I use is in terms of the muscles more than the movement, which in movement culture is sacrilege, right? Blasphemy. But that's kind of how I organize my structure and how I train people. So within that, like, I don't really program like the standard bench press, high bar back squat. Like I don't really do the standard movements, but I do the basic muscles. We're training those, and I guess you could say movement patterns. But a lot of people come to me and say, hey, with the idea that my training is all unconventional stuff, and they're like, I want to train like that. And I usually disappoint them. I'm like, hey, we're going to use these things you want to do maybe as a test. That right now, okay, you can't do them. Let's try this program where we're putting, the pieces together, and then retest it. And what do you know? Hey, you could do it now. Hey, it's easier than you thought. You have the skill down. You feel strong at it. All right, let's go back to building up the basics, and we'll see what it unlocks next. And that goes against the law of specificity in some regards, which I think is a little bit taken too far. But yeah, if you just become a stronger, more capable individual, you can do more cool shit.
Take me to the fitness industry and your views there. You touched on just now. Typically, fitness tends to take this principle of specificity too far. I know, don't have to look at a lot of your stuff to see that you have, I don't know, you maybe think some of it's a little bit absurd. That's how I sort of put it, because I share these. That's how I kind of view it. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think it's just promoted a lot, I guess, in the evidence-based thinking that we don't really know. How do I put this? So when I hear law of specificity, it's like always searching for the path of most efficiency, always searching for optimal. It's like, oh, you want this in the training? Let's plug it in X, Y, Z, practice the movement, pattern it, get better at it, adjust the volume. Oh, you're in pain, load management, let's pull it back. And it's a little bit too reductionistic for me. And that goes along with, hey, strength is a skill, just practice what you want to get good at. I guess I have a more romantic version of strength. I think that's a quality in and of itself that bleeds over to everything else in life and every other aspect. That might not be measurable, but yeah, that's kind of how I approach things. So I don't know if I'm right. I don't know who's right, but I look at it from a user standpoint. Like, what is the best way to approach a training program? Is it the most efficient way, or is it a way in which you receive the most information? It reminds me of there's studies being done in artificial intelligence on trying to get robots to walk and do mazes. And they found that there's robots where they program the task and the goal to complete the maze, get out of the maze, find the exit. And then they programmed robots to just try something new every time. And if they ran into a wall or if they fell, that was actually seen as a positive thing because they did something new. It's like, okay, now don't do the new thing again. Do something else that's new. And these novelty searching robots completed the maze 46 out of 49 times. And the exit searching ones completed it 3 out of 49 times. And then they did the same thing with robots learning to walk. The ones who saw exploration as positive learned how to walk much faster, because if you try all the ways to fall and all the ways to do things, you're going to find the right way and you're going to have all this information. If you just try to get it right, you're missing a lot of stuff. That's maybe the point, because you can't see that far ahead and you're being deceived by the maze that you're trying to navigate, right? It's there to deceive you. And that's life. And that's when I look at babies learning how to walk, that's how I see it happening. When you look at evolution, that's how evolution works. And when I look at training, I see it the same way. Maybe it's not just the law of specificity. Maybe we need to develop skills of navigating the maze and drawing a clear map of ourselves. Maybe isn't that the point? Right? Is the destination really the point, or is it not only the journey, but learning how to navigate it? And I feel like the stronger people get at that is the essence of strength and not just a measurable skill at the end of the road.
Talk to me about your time in the movement culture. I
feel like I've been in an AA meeting. No, my time in the movement culture was great. That was one of the rooms of the maze I went down and learned a lot. Of course, I ran into a big wall and had to turn around, but I'm glad. I just went too far down it. I ate up all the philosophical talk and the ideology, which I've done with many things not related to movement culture. You could be in the functional culture, whatever, mobility. Um, yeah, but I enjoyed it. It was a different perspective on training. Um, the community was awesome, like such a great community. I met really cool people. Um, yeah, I don't know what more to say, but it was a positive experience, and I really no longer feel like I'm in doing a movement practice in movement culture, quote unquote. Like I'm not in that, but still love the people in it, and still glad I dove into it a little bit. I'm still glad I did phase 1 Edo programming, even though I almost wrecked my body. Yeah.
Yes, still recovering from it somewhat.
Still there's scars, okay? Emotional and physical.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because I'm probably in a similar place to you. I drank the Kool-Aid for a good chunk of time there, and it was an extremely positive experience, benefited me in many ways. And if you take what's being peddled and the philosophy therein, then yeah, you still have a movement practice, even if like whatever you're doing, it's still a movement practice. But we kind of know that within that culture or that dogma, you don't, because it doesn't necessarily fit the bill of what is, of what that culture values or does.
Mm-hmm.
The Tell me about, like, obviously I'm a huge fan of Move Boys. The Spinal Waves video is, I was actually going to treat myself this morning and rewatch that because it's one of the few videos that I've saved and I watch it. I don't know. I've watched it a bunch of times. It's hilarious. But tell me, like, with that account that you have, and for folks listening, there will be a link to that if you haven't seen it. There's some hilarious shit. But the impetus there is obviously sort of poking fun a little bit at some of these things within the industry. And it's not hugely derogatory. It's just kind of shining a light on certain nuances of what we do or what they do. Tell me about where that comes from.
Yeah, I think like a lot of us, I mean, behind closed doors, we're joking around, like saying maybe what we really think. And yeah, we decided, hey, like we think it's funny, like especially me and Garrett, our G Money movement on Instagram. But we're just always like, hey, did you see this? We're just laughing. And in reality, I'm making fun of myself. Like these are all versions of myself that I've gone through. Yeah, so we're just having fun with it. I mean, fitness in general takes itself very seriously. People, I think I made a post about this recently, but there's a lot of people out there who have lost friendships, ended friendships because of disputes about the gait cycle, a portion of the gait cycle, or joint circles, or how you should move, what's the best way to move, like about exercises. That is so ridiculous. I feel like it's easy to get caught in, maybe it's like sports teams, down here, Chargers and the Raiders, there might be some deaths, like people will get stabbed and die during a game. And we already see this with politics, right? People are taking this to a level beyond what used to be normal. And I don't know if it's because we're hooked up and plugged into this hive mind technology, amplifying everything and creating echo chambers and just pushing fear and hate against others. But we're kind of getting that, at least on Instagram, with fitness. And I think it's good to remind ourselves that, hey, we're just kind of working out. We're just we're just getting a pump in the gym, broing out, chill.
I do love how, and I've really embraced this more myself in recent years, but I do love, like, with all of the different factions, that still sort of getting jacked is what it all boils down to. And, like, people will define that differently. But there's always this underlying thing of like, yeah, but we're all just here to get jacked.
Well, I think it boils down to self-worth. And that could be achieved through getting jacked is an easy one. I don't think anyone's going to turn that down. It's a nice byproduct. But even if you're like trying to get this skill, it's still to like fill in some hole and get some love or attention and increase your self-worth. And a lot of it now is like, now it's intellectual. Like, man, I know the way to move. I'm evidence-based. I know these things. Like, that's another way to fill in that void. So I see it all boiling down to that. But when people try to get philosophical and like, no, that's not why I move. I do it for the art of blah, 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 blah. Like, okay. And that's cool too. I'm all for stories and being the hero on the journey. So whatever journey you want to paint it out to be, I think it's a good strategy. But yeah, it's like, hey, people who are getting jacked are doing the same exact thing as you. They're trying to feel better about themselves. So, no judgment here. No shame-free zone. King-free.
No judgment? A little bit? Or actually,
yeah,
no?
okay. I am very judgmental. God damn it, Joe.
I mean,
that's the whole point of Move Boys is to judge people.
Yeah, including yourself, as you said. So I think that makes it okay, because you're like, I've been guilty of these things myself, and I'm not afraid to say that.
And also the advice I give to people, or especially clients, when I have my trainer hat on, when I take the trainer hat off, I'm judging you slightly. Like, I saw something, a Q&A about, should I train with a sunburn and like a bad sunburn? And if someone asked me that, I'd be like, if you don't feel good today, take the day off. Like, you're not here to torture yourself. It's cool. Wait till you feel better. Your discretion. Listen to your body, all that. But if you're like my training partner, my friend, I'd be making fun of you for not working out because you got a sunburn. You know what I mean? But it's two different things. One, I'm talking to I'm in the role of a coach, and it might be a general pop person. The other one, like we said, going into broing out with your friends. Yeah, you'll never live that down. Yeah. We'll call you Sunburn Boy.
There's something that so I had to listen to, I jumped in on one of your episodes of QuestCast, and was listening to you, and is it Mirth or John talking about?
Yeah, John Yoon and Majestic Mirth.
Yeah, and you were being quizzed about if you're still training jiu-jitsu, and that they don't think it's a great idea for you. And I was like, fuck, there's layers to this thing. And one thing I wanted to ask you, which was, it's very hard to get a read on you when you're trolling and when you're not. How do you, is that kind of something, because here's a surprise. When I listen to you say, I think I listened to you talking with Lucas Aaron, Range of Strength. And I was struck that, oh wow, he's actually quite an open and personable guy. Prior to hearing that, I would have thought that maybe you wouldn't have given so much, and maybe not been as relaxed and as easygoing as you are. And I don't know why I came up with that. It's just an assumption based off what I see, and But so boiling that down, hard to know when you're trolling and when you're not. Is that intentional? Do you kind of like straddling that line where it's a bit mystical?
I mean, well, like I said before, a lot of trainers are on the spectrum, Joe, but I'm not sure when I'm, Yeah, I'm not sure either, to be honest. Um, I think it could go either way. I think there's truth in everything, um, and we also shouldn't take everything too seriously. Yeah, I don't know the difference between um, the profane uh, and the mystical. I don't know.
That's a suitably vague response. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
No, don't be.
it's
Tell
probably
me.
a lie. Everything I said as well. So who knows?
I
Am I
mean,
lying to myself or am I lying to you? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't know.
tell me about the science aspect of what you do. There's obviously, you do a lot of research. I know you've done the research on bite training. I'm not sure whether you invented it or whether it's just been a tool that you've taken and worked with the talk stick. There's research there. There's the microdosing piece. Where did you become a guy that researches in this sort of way? And as a trainer, was that always something that you was in your mind that, hey, I want to explore these different outcomes and I want to use a group of people and apply a scientific process? Or did you come through university or college and that was something that was sort of taught to you?
So yeah, no, I'm a college dropout, but and I wouldn't even call myself a researcher. I mean, most of the time I'm just looking at abstracts of articles. If it's interesting, I'll look at the conclusion, and if I really want to know what's going on, I'll look at the methods and results. But um, that's just curiosity. I think a lot of things are interesting. Um, as far as like the predator course with the bite training, I did really try to dive in and tease out, what's happening. Um, but most of the times, like in terms of research, I'm looking at experts in the field for the people who do scour the research and do meta-analysis and publish. What do they think about things? Because there's just so much out there. So yeah, I'm just interested on a armchair level about most things. I try to listen to experts, and I think the cool thing about, especially now with the internet, Google Scholar, all these things, PubMed, they're available. You could just start learning things and looking at systematic reviews of things, which is good because we are in a weird time of information. So yeah, I just have fun looking at things, and a lot of them just pop up on my feed, which knows me by now.
Was that curiosity always there? Because I mean, I think it's not usual, right? For people who are into training, coaching, that whole thing. It's not a given that they're going to be sitting down, spending time, checking scholarly articles and whatnot.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's a different hobby than most people. I think it comes from going back to my journey, my past. And I'm not kidding. All these things I'm judging and making fun of was me. I had such confidence as a new trainer, and I know what I know, and it was because of looking at other people in the gym, T-Nation articles, stuff influencers said. So, I was so sure about things, and I'm at the point now where I see that's the value of science. Let's test it. And that's something I love, is experimenting and testing and trying to be objective. So now I just see it as information. What's happening? What information can I get from this? What can I learn? Should I update my model of reality, my view of the body and of training? Is there something I could take from this? Is there something I can experiment with? And I'm lucky to have had a lot of clients I've experimented with over the years, knowingly and unknowingly, to see what's worked. So yeah, I think it's all one big game of information, and science is a cool part of that. But it could also be, as I think we both seen, taken a little bit too far into scientism. But you got to
Yeah,
tread the line.
I think that's why I like some of the way you do it. It's kind of, I don't know, it's organic and it's accessible. It's with the people that you're working with, which, you know, I'm guessing you don't have, there's not thousands of people on the books there. There's, you know, you got a handful of clients, good ones online and face to face, and you have something that you're interested in, and then you go, hey guys, I want to test the results of this. And I guess even when you put stuff out, you're putting it out on social media so that even people who aren't being coached by you can participate in it as well. But I really like that. I think it's a great way to include people in the whole thing, and it shows that there is more to this sort of path of training, that, you know, you can have a little bit of fun with it. You can veer off track at times, and maybe you'll learn something cool from that.
Yeah. How does it feel? That's valid too. I think once again, when you get caught in the trap of efficiency and most optimal, you forget the fundamental, like the base layer of the pyramid in training is adherence. If you're not going to adhere, if you're not enjoying it, if you can't stick to it, then you've already lost. So you could look at the top part of the pyramid, which is like, how do we get the most efficient in this 12 weeks doing this one thing with this specific population? What is the best way? And everyone has to do it that way. But people should know that, hey, when you zoom out, offering something that people enjoy and creating a good experience is really the main goal that you have. Everything else is built on top of. So in that, it's not as sexy. We don't really waste time on studying that, but it is what we all need to do, is just, and that's where the art comes in. Provide a service, provide a modality, no matter what it is, and allow people to access it.
Did you continue training jiu-jitsu? That's what I really wanted to ask.
All right. God damn it. You listen to me spout off of my calorie deficit like the other guy throughout this whole episode, just to segue into this. I don't even know what I was talking about the whole time. I stopped training jiu-jitsu after I was told it's not for me. But I think
was that a serious discussion? Between,
yeah,
was it?
It was a good friend telling me, hey, this is not for you. You need to stop.
Okay.
Like I'm telling you as a friend to stop. And but the biggest reason I stopped was because like he was coaching me, and so he stopped coaching me, so I stopped doing it. I'd like to continue. I would just have to kind of find time in my schedule, join a school again. But yeah, I stopped. I mean, my coach told me to stop, essentially.
He was your coach in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess when the coach says stop, it's hard to not stop.
I'm a very coachable person too, so I listened.
Do you feel better for it?
I don't know if I feel better or worse. Like so the point that he was making, telling me to stop, was like I wasn't into jujitsu for jujitsu. It was like a way to like wrestle, around and get a sweat, and kind of it was like a physical activity for me. Like I looked at it as part of my training. And I didn't really care about the art. I didn't like bow when I went on the mat. So I think maybe that was part of it. So he was like, hey, like find something else you enjoy doing. Like I could see that. You know, a lot of people take jujitsu very seriously, and maybe it's perceived as like maybe I'm wasting people's time if I'm not um, also taking it seriously, especially when the person is taking time out of their day to help coach me. So when I try to put myself in their shoes, maybe that's where it was coming from.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's honest. I
Thanks for
guess if
asking, Joe. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That was a few years ago now, wasn't it? That discussion.
Yeah, during the pandemic, yeah.
Okay. Okay, maybe only a couple years ago. Yeah, cool. Um yeah, I find it's jiu-jitsu is a funny one because it does attract a lot of people, especially these days. It attracts everyone who's into moving or the body or training, whatever, is like, oh yeah, I want to do it. But I find that once you're in there, it's really not. It's often not as. It's not an easy thing to maintain with the low level of commitment. You kind of need to go all in, or just not at all.
Yeah, I found myself also like I was never trying to win uh when I was sparring. I just wanted to like to get in positions where I wanted to see how much I can muscle out of things intentionally because once again I'm viewing this as like a training practice and not like a skill or a game. But I mean, I enjoyed that. I'd like to get back into it. Yeah, I'll get back into it at some point, maybe this year, if schedule allows. I want to put my kid in it, so I know I'm gonna kind of get back into it.
How's your kid?
He just turned 4,
Cool.
and I wrestle like you had. We're talking about. Uh, you were interviewing someone who was doing his steps every day. So my steps physical activity is playing with my kid, and we wrestle every day. I mean, since he was like 6 months old, just wrestling. So he's very intuitive, very strong, and very good at it. So yeah, I'm thinking 4 is the age where I want to put him into a school at some point, and then
That's
I'm gonna
cool.
want to do it too with him. Yeah.
Is Murrieta? I'm guessing there's a few academies there. Like California is the mecca of jiu-jitsu these days. You got some good spots.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All the schools are here, really saturated. It's a lot of money in it. You know, uh, these studios are making good bank. So yeah, there's one on every corner.
Hmm. Amazing. Um, Last question, man. Before I let you go, and I say that because I could. I know it's afternoon for you, and you probably got things to do. When you're looking at the fitness game, and you're looking at coaches and all of this stuff we've sort of chatted on, what do you wish coaches would do differently?
What do I wish coaches would do differently? I think something one of my coaches I had said that I took to heart was be the lighthouse, not the tugboat. It was Julian Pinau who said that. And you see this on social media. People are trying to like go into this tearing other people down or trying to tell people they're wrong and steer them towards what they think instead of just being a beacon of, hey, guys, look what I found is beneficial. Look what I do in these situations. You know, be an example or show what you do instead of trying to tear other people down and reroute them to what you think is the proper path. And that kind of seemed to be how social media was, or um, like, I don't know, 6 years ago, it was like, hey, here's a challenge. Hey, try this new thing. Hey, that's cool. Let me try it. And now it's very like tribal, where it's like, no, you're a clown if you do that, or you're gonna get hurt if you do that. It's more negativity based than, I guess, growth and creative based. And as Ito, the great Ito once says, more exploiting than exposing.
Did he really say that?
Yeah, he said you're either he said you're either exploiting your practice or exposing your practice.
Okay, yeah.
Had something to do with tennis balls, I'm not sure, but I really like that line. Glad we could bring it full circle at the end.
Yeah, it's like a snake eating its tail, that one. Mate, where can people find your stuff? Where can they connect with you? And, are you doing any programs? Plug yourself, please.
Okay. Yeah. So best place is at Strongcamps on Instagram. You might have to type it all the way to the S for me to pop up because I think I'm shadow banned again. And we have so online coaching's there. If you want to look at some of the Byte stuff, we have free resources. If you click the link in the bio, free webinar you could watch, some videos on there. And there's going to be four online training coaches and programs pretty soon we're going to launch. So if you want to see my programming and also some of my friends I respect in the fitness games programming, stay tuned for that.
And what about the podcast? Is that an ongoing project?
The Questcast?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's on pause. I'm not sure.
I like that.
Who knows, Joe? Yeah, who knows?
That's cool.
Do you want to hear more, Joe?
Yeah, maybe.
Did you listen to it, or did you listen to one in preparation for this podcast?
I started listening to two. I didn't listen to them all the way. It was more so in preparation for this because I wasn't actually.
Yeah, we're not going to start it up again then. We're going to kill it.
I didn't know it existed, and then I thought, I should check if he's got a podcast, and then I stumbled across it. So I listened to you guys play devil's advocate for a little bit. I thought that was a fun format, and then I listened to the conversation, which was actually very funny. The conversation you had about your coach telling you to quit jiu-jitsu, because out of the blue last night, I stumbled across the Joe Rogan episode where he tells Brendan Schaub that he needs to quit MMA.
Exactly. I was Brendan. Yeah, I felt exactly the same.
Yeah, it was cool, man.
I wanted some tears, but yeah, that's what I got.
Matt, I really appreciate you making the time and chatting with me today. It was really cool to get to know you. I like what you're putting out there. I like what you're doing. I'll continue to follow the thing. For anyone listening, I'm obviously going to put links and whatnot to your account and everything, so people can see some of the stuff we've been referencing. I look forward to another chat down the track. Maybe once you've taken up jiu-jitsu, and I can respect you a little bit more for that. Appreciate it. Thank you, DJ.
Thank you for having me on, Joe. I appreciate it.